This episode of Wonder Buzz is brought to you by Sadbox, the only subscription box that doesn't promise to make your life better. It just meets you where you are, lying on the floor, wearing one sock, Googling how to disappear into the woods, but probably with Wi-Fi. Every month, Sadbox delivers a curated collection of half-used candles, ethically sourced spiral notebooks you'll never write in, and a handwritten note that says, "You're not broken. Yet." We were going to partner with BetterHelp, but they lost us in their 45-question onboarding process. We were also going to partner with Helix, but we told the truth about what actually happens on a mattress and they got scared. So here we are, Sadbox. Because you don't need a Squarespace website. You need a nap and fewer choices. You can try to use a promo code, but it will only get you 0% off. We don't believe in discounts. We believe in resignation. Sadbox. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Wonder Buzz. I'm your host, Nate Larson. Wonder Buzz is a podcast about curiosity, creativity, and other random stuff. It's a potpourri, a grab bag, a buffet, a junk drawer. Make of it what you will. I am recording from the heart of Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina. I have been exploring this beautiful national forest and Nantahala National Forest. I'm also in the middle of some serious hailstorms, so it is loud in the van and I'm recording during breaks during the hailstorms, but I have a feeling that you're going to hear some of the hail soon. I'm at an elevation of around 6,000 feet. I feel like I should start to report my elevation on this podcast. It seems like it's vital information for listeners, and maybe just in case there are low-flying planes. I'm camping near Rough Butt Bald Mountain. Yes, that is the name. Rough Butt Bald Mountain, or just Da Butt, as I like to call it, is located in the Great Balsam Mountains, which is part of the Blue Ridge Mountains. You have to see these mountains. I certainly suggest hiking here and getting out into the woods, but even if you just drive the Blue Ridge Parkway, it is well worth the trip. The Blue Ridge Parkway is one of the most beautiful roads that winds through scenic vista after scenic vista. It's just truly one of the most beautiful places in the United States. Also, don't tell North Carolina, but I saw South Carolina this week. I just don't want to make a big deal about it. I'm very excited for today's episode. I get to have a great conversation with a wonderful guest about creativity, photography, and navigating an artistic life. So let's get right into the episode today. I have the pleasure of introducing a wonderful guest today. She is a photographer, an actor, a beautiful writer, a voiceover artist. You've seen her on stage in movies and national commercials. You've heard her in your video games, and we're going to talk about all of this today. She may or may not still play a woodwind instrument, and I'm going to find out. Sarah Sido, welcome to Wonder Buzz.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I am sitting in hailstorms in North Carolina. Where are you today?
Wow, I'm in Los Angeles, which is where I live, and we are not currently having hail.
It's very nice there when it's not really bad.
It is true.
And you've been there for a long time now.
I've been in LA for a long time, which I go back and forth between feeling like, oh, yeah, of course, and still being shocked at sometimes.
Is it a place where you can live where you actually feel from, or do you feel like a permanent visitor?
Yeah, no, I think at this point, I wouldn't say I feel like I'm from LA because Vermont still definitely holds that position. And I think was very formative in so many ways and is in my heart in many ways. But it's definitely my home. I definitely don't feel like a visitor. It's definitely my home. It's definitely where I have a community. It's where, I'm a child. It's where he has a community. It's very funny to me sometimes that I have a child who's a Californian.
You've raised a Californian.
It's like, oh, you really are a Californian, which is very different than being a Vermonter.
Of course, the burning question of the day, you, if I remember correctly, played the oboe, right?
I played the clarinet and the oboe and the saxophone.
Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry. I didn't remember the others.
No, you were not wrong.
Do woodwinds still play a significant part in your life?
Unfortunately, they do not. They do not, though I have my clarinet and I always threaten to pull it back out and somehow return to my former woodwind playing glory, but I have not yet done so.
Oh, you got busy with other things. I don't play the bass much anymore. It's not very portable, so I do understand how other things take over. So there are so many places to dive into your story. So strap in. Here we go. I am really curious about some of your very early memories about being a creative person. Some of those earliest memories you have in Vermont of things that you loved or expressions of creativity that you loved. Some of those early things that stick with you.
That's interesting. I mean, I think the first thing that came to mind was actually just that as a kid and in my home and in our school community, creativity was such a part of everything. I mean, I guess in many ways I would credit my very first memories of it to my parents. You know, we would do these plays on the deck when I was a little kid, and my mom would direct, and we would paint sheets and hang them as the scenery. So those are probably my first ones. I also started playing music before I read words. I played the recorder starting when I was 2, but not the way you think of a 2-year-old playing recorder. I was in a quartet and we played classical music.
I wasn't off talking about the woodwinds there. That's a very formative moment for you creatively.
So yeah, so the woodwinds run deep.
Would you mind explaining a little bit about where you grew up? Because it is an inspirational place.
Well, I do think that's sort of at the heart of, I mean, I told my mom once, I think before I had a child, maybe when I was pregnant, like that she had made parenting look very creative and that was part of why I felt like I could face it. It was like one more big creative endeavor. And our house definitely reflected that. My dad is an architect, and he and his graduate students had built the house together, and there's a slide from my old room that landed inside the house that landed on my brother's bed. And then you sort of went back around and climbed up a ladder back to the room and into this loft and down the slide. It's in an incredibly remote place, road off a dirt road, and then a mile-long driveway. So there was space, you know, there was space to do whatever project anyone wanted. The house was crazy. My mom had this sort of wonderful, or still has this kind of wonderful wild garden. You know, she's never believed in planting things in rows. And aesthetics are a big part of it all, which I feel like I've sort of come back around to appreciating and understanding that they had their aesthetic view on the world and then they created their environment to fit it.
That's a beautiful way of describing it. I grew up in a very creative house as well. And I think that made a really huge difference for me, just feeling very natural to explore things creatively. It didn't feel like you were doing something different. I think that was really similar to how I felt growing up. Do you remember your first time on stage, maybe outside the balcony theater at home? Your earliest stage memory?
Yeah. So I guess the first ones after the plays on the deck were, I was in a children's theater, which I think you maybe went on to run at one point, but I was in a children's theater in Woodstock, and it was a really great program looking back on it. I don't think we really knew what we had, but we did a lot of improvisation and physical movement and theater games, and then we would write our own plays. And so starting at about 3rd grade, I always did the plays there and totally loved them. So the first one I remembered, it was like this story about ants and grasshoppers, and I was an ant.
I think my first play, maybe I was 6. And I played a giant. It must have been Jack and the Beanstalk or something. And I played the giant. And I really remember my job was just to be loud. And the audience responded to that. And that was my hook. I never looked back after that. I did work in children's theater and operated children's theater for a while. And the reason I ask you the question, because I was thinking about my first time being on stage, is that I have students that still contact me and will tell me about the performances they were in as being these really important moments for them creatively. They remember the first time they were in The Little Prince or the first time they made costumes or scenery. It hurts me to say this, many decades ago. But you forget how important those memories can be or how much they can really build confidence. And so it was just something I was really curious about because I know you had that early experience as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely totally fell in love with it there. And I think I also really fell in love with the freedom of it. Like, I feel quite lucky that it was not an overly prescribed kind of situation. It was definitely process over product. Like, who knows what that play looked like to the audience with the ants and the grasshoppers. But we had a really wonderful time with that process. And then I also have to give credit to our combined former teacher, of course, Mrs. Worrell, who just took theater to a whole new level for me. And that's what brought in the structure and technique. I mean, in her case, very specifically, vocal technique, but gave me kind of a theatrical language to work with.
I wasn't even going to go into high school because I think it's a whole other topic, that theater program that we were in. I try to explain it to people sometimes because everyone's done high school theater, but I'm like, yeah, I don't think you did this kind of high school theater.
Yeah.
It was very specific and it was very driven by a work ethic as well, along with the vocal technique and everything that you were talking about. There was this, well, your full-time job is obviously after school theater. I don't
Right.
really care what else is going on in your life.
Right.
And some kids came out of that program that took it very seriously, you being one of them, to go on to make it a career. That leads me to want to ask you about living a creative life, whether it's part-time or full-time. There are all these ups and downs. There are very, very high highs. And I think it's also a life of a lot of self-doubt sometimes. I think that's a big part of it. So, how have you navigated that ebb and flow of all of that through your career, or do you think about it differently?
It's such an integral part of the process that I definitely think about the resilience that's come from it. And I don't know that that can be taught. It's funny, I was listening to a podcaster the other day who was talking about how he like makes his kids face rejection, like ask directions on their own or ask for things on their own. And it made me laugh because it was like, well, that's what my, many decades of my career have basically been a boot camp of. But I mean, I feel incredibly lucky to have lived a life as an artist. I feel like someone said to me very early when I was in New York, because I had first gone to New York and was acting professionally, and someone basically asked me why I wasn't in LA. And I was like, well, because I love the theater and da da da. And he was like, yeah, but you take this seriously. And if you actually want to take it seriously and see where art and commerce come together, you have to go to LA. And I was like, well, okay, then I guess I'm going to LA. It was just sort of like, oh, okay, I get it now. And then I, luckily enough, was in a play that ended up sort of bringing me to LA, which is not the normal way to come into town with a play. But there's sort of nothing to do but embrace the fact that it really is this roller coaster. It's interesting to look at it from this point versus where I would have talked about it 15, 20 years ago, because how do I say this? Like, I have seen it be very hard for some people as they reach this point in life and say, oh, wait, I don't have whatever it may be. They didn't find the success that they intended to find. And I have watched that be a really difficult transition for some people.
If there's a silver lining to it, the roller coaster ride, I do think it really builds resilience that impacts the rest of your life. So I do think there is a hardening in a good way that can help you through all your adventures in life, whether they're creative or not, I guess is all I'm trying to say.
I think that's true. As you say that, I guess I just sort of talked about the darker side that I sometimes see, but I've also seen both people that have stayed, whether it's in acting or in filmmaking more generally or in another creative profession, really soar and do phenomenally with it. But I've also seen people leave that and then do phenomenally in other careers. And it totally is because of their acting skills or the skills that were sort of tangential to acting in a way that I always find really interesting. And even things like with photography, which, I know we'll get to, but like sometimes, especially a few years ago when Facebook forums were a bigger thing, I would see photographers come on and be destroyed because they had, had a potential lead that fell through. And it just was like,
Yeah.
come on.
Thursday for
Come
you.
on now.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's a gift.
Absolutely. I noticed it a lot in the corporate world. When I would see someone present and they would own the room, I'd say, oh, that's a theater kid.
Yeah.
That was, I would know immediately who those people were. Another thing I noticed in the creative life is that there's a lot of pressure from the business side of it to be a thing or to have a brand. And that's certainly become far more intense with the dominance of social media. And it can feel pretty limiting if you've been someone who's explored and dabbled and wanted to try different things all the time. I really find it to be tough in photography because there is certainly a business pressure in photography to lock yourself into a category and to build a clientele And that makes all the business sense in the world. But I also find it to be stifling where I don't want to be boxed in like that. Have you had to deal with that feeling of the business pull and then also maybe where you want to go creatively not always being aligned, or how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a much longer time than it appeared online, I was still making more money as an actor than I was as a photographer. But I felt like you couldn't, especially in Los Angeles, you couldn't put yourself out there as a photographer and be seen to also be an actor without it being like, oh, she's an actor. I don't know. I feel like I have taken so much from acting that is directly fed into my photography and how I see the world and what I'm interested in. But I could see it somehow, or I felt that it somehow would diminish my work as an actor. So I pretty quickly was only talking about myself as a photographer, even when that really didn't reflect the reality of my day-to-day work. Because of the ways that I was acting, social media didn't really matter. I was not getting called in for things because I was never good enough at social media. B, I had very deep, long relationships in the industry. And obviously, you have a system with agents and managers and the whole thing. And then within photography itself, once I've sort of said, like, okay, I'm only presenting myself to the world this way, I definitely have felt what you are saying about the desire to pigeonhole. But what I've come to in my mind is that because I do quite a few different genres, and it's just that I'm the through line. I'm the genre. My style is what makes it cohesive. There certainly are some limitations around that, like I'm not trying to do landscape photography or nature photography, but I'm not saying, "Oh, I am just a newborn photographer," because the same sensibility that I'm gonna bring to that, I might bring to a brand or to a wedding or whatever it may be, that it's about how I see the world. And since locking into that and having confidence myself in that, I do feel like I have gotten no pushback from anyone else about it. Granted, I think there are genres, like if you're trying to be a luxury wedding photographer, like in these sort of very specific niches where people want to see that you've published your 30 weddings or whatever, I think that would be different. But the way that I want to participate in the industry, I don't feel particularly pigeonholed.
That's such a great mindset to have, is that you're the product, you're the genre. And so wherever you decide to explore, it's you. And I think that's the best approach for sure. I think when you're a photographer, you end up doing a little bit of everything, especially if you're trying to make a living at it. And I just have such respect for all the different ways people explore photography. It's wonderful to see. I'm going to steal all the stuff you just said. That's going to be my new answer to the question.
Please do. I mean, it's funny, like, even as you repeated back to me with the thing of being the product, like, in some ways, maybe that's something I've taken from my time as an actor as well. Because as an actor, of course, you quite literally are the product. And that can sometimes be scary or frustrating, but maybe that was an essential sense I had of how one does art. You're you. At the end of the day, you're you, and it's all you can be.
One thing I love about photography compared to all these other different things you can explore, and when you're on stage and when you're doing film, of course, incredibly collaborative environment. Photography, I really found to be a sweet spot between speed and autonomy when I'm doing things creatively. And by that, I mean, I can have a vision for something and execute on it and even get a final result out in a way that's relatively a short amount of time compared to if I sit down to write or to create music, it's a far more painful process for me. And certainly, if you're collaborating too, it just takes longer. And they're all wonderful in their own way. But photography was this really great sweet spot of this balance of control and speed and creativity. Do you have any thoughts about that? Did any of that kind of sense of autonomy attract you to photography at all, or were those not really in the mix?
Was essential to the mix. The beginning of the shift for me really was around having a child and no longer being, well, attempting for some very painful years to be on this schedule where you're expected to be anywhere at any time and have no conflicts and no other priorities and be told to be in Santa Monica 30 minutes before and jump in your car and fight your way across town and then get a call that you need to be on set at 4 a.m. And I love that life. I in no way mean to sort of downplay how lucky I felt to be a part of that life. But once I had a child, And not having any family out here, having moved all the way across the country and not really having a support system, it was impossible. Days where I got home and just cried were not few. And it wasn't a conscious choice within that. It was much more feeling like a shell of myself and, oh, this isn't working, and picking up the camera. But once I had done so, that agency, the fact that without waiting for the phone to ring, without needing to be available at 4 a.m., I could create something, sort of feel like myself through the act of creating, was everything. And I'm totally miss the collaborative aspect, especially of stage, but also of film and TV. I think photography can be sort of lonely sometimes. But then when you are on a shoot or have it, even when it's a small thing with a family, there can still be this element of co-creating, collaborating, which can feel reminiscent. And I love that. And acting will always be the sort of window through which I first view things. So even just the feeling when I have a big shoot of like, it's the day of the show, it's the day of the show. Let's go put on a show. Yeah, I do love.
Hey, Wonderbuzz listeners, this is me interrupting me to tell you about a special offer that is only available for Wonderbuzz podcast listeners. Visit nathanlarson.com to get 20% off and free shipping on all orders. Just use the promo code WonderBuzz at checkout. That is 20% off all orders and free shipping when you use promo code WonderBuzz at checkout. NathanLarson.com has hundreds of fine art photos available with multiple print options, whether you are looking for landscapes, abstracts, travel, wildlife, or still life photos. Use promo code WonderBuzz for 20% off and free shipping. Thanks so much. And now back to me. This is total tangent, but you were in one of the saddest commercials. I remember seeing it on an airplane or in an airport, and I'm just trying to remember, was it a mobile phone commercial or something?
Yes, it was.
Oh, so you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes. It was a PSA that AT&T made. But it was actually this amazing job because they paid like a commercial, even though it basically was a PSA. And it had so many crazy stunts that it shot for over a week. And I got to do my own stunts. It was more like a film than a commercial. But yeah, no, people were like, I can't watch it. And I have to say, so the whole point of the PSA was not to text and drive. And it worked on me, because I was like, I can't die and have my byline be woman from anti-texting commercial dies while texting in her car.
You felt the weight of that.
I did. Yes, it totally shut it off for me. I do not peek at my phone.
I remember watching it thinking like, oh, it's Sarah. And then, oh, it's Sarah. That was rough.
Well, I mean, because I die and I kill my daughter and I kill the other driver who has a pregnant wife. I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot in a little PSA. Okay, that just popped in my brain for some reason. Okay, maybe back to some more fun things. So you mentioned that collaborative part of stage acting. There's nothing like the stage. It's hard to compare that to anything. Do you have a favorite memory from your adult career? So moving out of the balconies in the little theater to, I don't know, one of your favorite moments of being on stage? I mean, a lot of moments that I really loved. But at one point, I was doing The Crucible and I was playing Abigail. And this was just sort of a funny thing about how theater can go through your life. I had played a different one of the girls in high school. The youngest girl, the one who's sort of the first to fall prey to the imagining of things. So to revisit a play as an adult and have a more central role in it. And then also at the time to be able to look ahead to the other women in the cast with me and think, oh, in 10 years, I could play Proctor's wife, and then there's even a much, much older woman in it. And just the way that, I don't know, but just like a lovely way to relate to a piece of theater and get to revisit it and get to see how it could continue in your life. That was one of my favorites. Also, Abigail is just the most fun. Is there more fun to be had on stage than playing Abigail in The Crucible? Like, I don't know.
It's such a great perspective because it gave you this real sense of I can explore this and there's roles and there's stories to tell at every age. And that's beautiful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I did a really bad job of introducing the type of photography that you focus on. I find it to be incredibly moving.
I appreciate it.
There is a very cinematic quality to it from my perspective. I know you're not looking for my feedback on it. I'm just going to give it to you anyways. And I really encourage people to go look at your website and look at the moments and stories and the intimacy that you're bringing to these families. So maybe you could describe the type of photography that you're doing right now that they'll see on your website, because I did none of that when I introduced you.
Thank you, and I really actually appreciate that feedback. So, I should be better at knowing how to describe it. I do a lot of family photography, and when people ask me about it, I often say I do sort of a long form sessions. I'm not looking for the one shot with everybody facing the camera or the holiday card. I'm really trying to tell the story of who this family is right now. What does it feel like? What do the relationships look like? And so sometimes that looks like newborn, sometimes it's family, sometimes it's other, as I mentioned before, brands or entrepreneurs or a wedding or two. But it's really always from this place of wanting to tell a very intimate story, yeah, about who they really are. And then it's been a funny journey of like at the very beginning I used to say things like documentary photographer, and then I still use that sometimes, but there was a whole debate within the documentary community about what rules you have to follow and what's allowed. And do I sometimes move mom and a newborn into some beautiful light and get a portrait? I absolutely do. There's influences from a lot of different types of photography, but I am always interested in the emotion and in it feeling intimate and real, for lack of a better word.
You're doing what serves the story the best. And this is back to me being a rebel against all the labels we were talking about earlier, where as long as you're serving the story and you're creating
Yeah.
this emotional impact. And that's, again, I think when I look at your photography, maybe that's the better way of describing it, is
Hmm.
there's a very strong emotional impact, whether you move them into the light or whether you're in the shadows taking photos. That part to me doesn't matter.
Often it really is a mix of the two. I talk to my clients a lot before the shoot about having something to do. So, if, for example, someone has called me about a newborn shoot and they also have a toddler, I'll ask, do you want me to come at 5 when you do a bath with the two kids together? Or do you have a tradition where you make pancakes on Sunday morning and it's the one time your teen comes down and doesn't have their headphones on, or whatever it may be? Like there is work beforehand to find the story and to help them through that, because I think to just show up and be like, act natural, it's not serving your client. So really finding that.
Absolutely. And again, I'm going to put the link in the show notes, but go look at studiosido.com. It's a really amazing body of work.
Thank you.
And the other project that I wanted to make sure we covered, because I think you're a very natural teacher. I just think that's part of your DNA. That's always just been my impression of you. So when I saw Photo Curious, I thought, perfect. It's such a natural extension of what we were just talking about with your approach to photography, and even before with theater, to really look at how you're going to share that perspective and open up this world to a wider audience. So I love this new Substack, and if people don't know what a Substack is, let's just call it a blog. But I'll also put the link for that in the show notes. But tell me a little bit about the brainstorm that led to Photo Curious.
In all honesty, I think I am still trying to figure that out myself to a certain extent. And I read some advice early on of like, don't worry too much about defining it because you don't know what it is until you're doing it anyway. And I think that's really true. But it did grow out of really what you were saying of I always have this desire to turn around and teach what I know, with wanting to find a way to be online that felt more honest and in line with the work that I do. I really never loved Instagram. I need to be better.
What? That's shocking.
I know this is not a breaking news, but I just feel like I didn't like it. There's many reasons to not like it, but part of what I didn't like about it is I didn't really recognize who I was online. And I wanted to find a place where I could recognize and stand behind my online persona more in this day and age when you need an online presence somewhere. And so it really came out of this search of like, where could mine be? As I started to explore Substack, I was like, oh, this is where it should be. 15 years ago, I had an acting blog that very quickly had become quite successful. And it was with a partner, and we eventually dissolved it because we couldn't figure out how to monetize it. And not that I think I'll be monetizing Photo Curious anytime soon, or if at all, but reading Substack, I was like, oh, this is where we would have had that and monetized it. So I just the format felt very friendly to writers, friendly to creators in a way that was really appealing. And I'm still figuring out what it is, but I'm enjoying writing. I'm kind of trying to take my own advice that curiosity and creativity are worthwhile just in their own right. And so having a new creative venture is going to bring more richness to your life, even if you don't know how. And obviously, I'm someone who has liked to jump around with sort of where I put my creativity. And so focusing on writing, I just felt exciting and a little bit scary and fun. So I'm still figuring out how it fits into the workflow of my life, but it's something that feeds me. It doesn't just take, it feeds me.
Everything you're saying I could apply to what I'm doing with Wonder Buzz. I don't know what it is yet either, but I'm doing the exact same journey that you're talking about. The thing I wanted to say about Photo Curious for people out there who haven't picked up a camera in a long time, or maybe who have never picked up a camera, it's a wonderful set of inspirational photography prompts. It's a really great format. So I encourage people to go check out Photo Curious, and you can find that link in the show notes as well. We haven't talked about your voice work a lot or at all. I've just mentioned it briefly, but I'm having these little flashes of memories when I'm talking to you right now. When I moved to Vermont, I moved there midstream. I came in as a sophomore into the high school, and it was a very small high school. I had moved a lot growing up, so I was always the new kid. So that was a pretty familiar role for me. But it was a school that everyone had been together a long time. So, you kind of felt like you were joining a program in progress when you moved into that high school. And I remember I had homeroom with Ms. Ridlin, and that very, very first day of school, she either assigned you, I think she told you, because she was kind of a dictatorial type person, you're going to answer the questions from the new kid. And I don't know if you remember this at all.
I actually don't remember that.
It's always the worst feeling too when you get called out as the new kid. The very first thing on the very first day, the teacher's like, "You don't belong here. So how do we integrate you?" And then she assigned you to answer questions that I had. And I just remember you turning around, and you had a very impactful voice even in high school. And you just started giving me the dish on everybody. You're
That's
like, "This
hilarious.
person does this, and this person does that, and this is where this is, and that's where that is." Like, you just wanted to get it over in one go. And then I would have the rule book for the rest of my time there. It was just such a funny memory that just came to me. But that was all related to your voice. I'm winding it back around. I haven't been able to see you in a lot of stage productions, and the ones I did see you in, of course, were a long time ago. But I just always thought you had such a unique quality to your voice. Did you purposely get into voice work, or did voice work find you because of all the other things you were doing?
It found me in a very funny way. I don't know that this is a roadmap that anyone else could follow, but I was in New York, I was acting, and I sent out an agent blast of a headshot and a cover letter. Back when we were doing it all by hand, I was trying to find my first agent. And basically, I had not done my homework well. And I sent a headshot to a voiceover agent, just a headshot. My first commercial ever was also a funny accident, too. But he called and he was like, I'm having a slow day, and your resume and headshot just came across my desk, but I'm a voiceover agent, so I'm giving you a call to see what you sound like, basically. And we talked for a while, and he was like, go get a demo, go make one, and send it to me when you've got it. So I went and made a demo, and he did not take me on as a client. But then I had this demo, so I sent it out to, 5, 10 agents, and a really great, wonderful agent did take me on. And so that was the beginning of working as a voiceover actor.
What a happy accident.
It was a total happy accident. And also, similarly, the first commercial I ever booked, it was one of these casting places where there's 10 things going on, and I went to the wrong one. and I signed in to the wrong one. And I had very specifically been told to wear a floral dress, and no one else was in a floral dress. And as I was leaving, I happened to look over to the other end of this big studio space and saw 30 women in floral dresses. And I was like, oh, but I didn't have time at that point to go to that one because I was going to be late for my waitressing job. So I just went running off. And that was the first commercial that I booked. So yeah, basically happy accidents have played a large role.
There's a whole host of things that come together that lead to those happy accidents. And you don't really know that stuff until you can look back and say, okay, I was prepared for those opportunities or to
Right.
take advantage of them when they did happen.
I have a story that just made me think of that you are actually a part of. It's one of the things I think of as one of my biggest creative lessons that I think about all the time. And I feel like I should make a note after this to write about it at some point. I'm photo curious. But I was doing a play. I was quite new to New York and doing a play. I'm 21. And the director was giving me very specific notes, and I was trying my absolute hardest to do what the director wanted. And it wasn't exactly working. And opening night came and went, and you came to see it. And I was like so disappointed in myself that it hadn't felt great and it hadn't been great. And I think basically because of that disappointment, I went to talk to the director the next day and I was like, I don't know what you mean. And he was like, you know what? Throw out my notes. Throw out my notes. Just do it how you want to do it tonight. So I go out, I do it how I want to do it. It goes fun. Like we have like the night, we have the show. Like it couldn't go better. And the director comes and finds me after, and he's like, "That's what I meant. Like that's what I've been asking for." And in my mind, I was doing the opposite of everything he had asked for because we're two separate people with two separate ways of communicating, and we're both early in our careers and young. But it was such a lesson. You of course have to take in direction, but you can't ever forget to put it through your own filter because that is what had been missing. I was trying to do what he wanted instead of taking it and really truly putting it through my filter. And that feels true now with the photography work. The only shoots I ever leave disappointed in are if I have been trying too hard to please someone and haven't taken the time to make sure I've put it through my own point of view.
I have to slow down to do that. I find that the trick I've learned is that I have to, this is going to sound really super simple, but I have to breathe.
Yes.
So when I feel rushed and like I'm not going to be doing it from my perspective or the client's kind of so loud that it's taking over, I just have to take a moment and breathe and remember, it's like you said earlier, like you're the genre. This needs to come through you. I've realized the way I have to approach that is slowing down, which is really hard for me.
Same. That's exactly the same for me. I think when you first start, you feel the pressures so much. You're worried about getting what they want so much. And it was only with a sense of like, I have time. Like I basically almost tell myself, I have plenty of time. I've got this. I have time. Like I have time to look. I don't have to rush right into shoot. I have time to look. I have time to think. I have time to breathe. I have time to try something and it not being the right thing and do something else. There's time.
Yeah. You need those little mantras for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to wrap up with quick cues. It's going to be its own game show someday. It's going to be so popular. But before we do that, do you have any questions for me? I like to give everyone an opportunity to ask me questions. You don't have to have any, but if you do, I'm making myself available for the next 30 to 60 seconds.
Yes. Well, I've listened to your other episodes, so some have been answered for me. But do you think of yourself as having any kind of a home base? Like, is there a piece of you that like you are doing this and then you will go back to, or this is a roadmap now?
I think I'm mature enough to know not to answer that question definitively. I probably would have been a little more over my skis earlier in life, but maybe because I moved a lot growing up and that could factor into my answer. But I feel like I have a lot of homes. I feel like there are very special places for me that have a piece of me or that when I'm there, I feel more whole. And Vermont is absolutely one of those. Vermont is magical. I don't really have great words to describe Vermont because it just is such a feeling for me. So I do feel very pulled to Vermont still. I love Wyoming. When I'm out there, I feel very at peace and very much at home. And there's other places like that as well. So I'm trying to just take the approach of I'm going to do this until I don't want to do it anymore. And Right now I love it, and I just feel like my home is wherever the next thing is that I'm gonna go explore.
That's so cool. It's wild.
There's some uncomfortable moments with it for sure. So, but in general, it's good. It's very good. All right. So, quick cues. I have written down 10 questions, and you're not going to answer them all. You're just going to throw out a couple numbers and give me your hot take.
8.
8. Okay. What is your favorite guilty pleasure TV show?
Does it have to be guilty pleasure? I can just say like the thing that I watched that was just so good. I just watched the series Dying for Sex, and it is so, so good. And Jenny Slate and Michelle Williams should win all the awards. Just give them all of them. And thing I just feel like people need to know is don't judge it on the pilot. Pilots are hard. There's too much setup that it has to do. But by episode 3 to the end, it is just the most beautiful television.
All right. Give me another number.
2.
No. Yeah. These are so good, these questions. If you were stranded on a desert island and you could have one snack that magically replenished, so you never ran out of the snack, what would that snack be?
The reason what's coming to mind is watermelon. I don't know why. Apparently, if I'm on a desert island, I want unlimited amounts of watermelon. I'm not gonna try to explain it.
Yeah, don't explain it. Just let it sit there. That's good. Okay, give me another number.
4.
What is one song that you listen to psych yourself up?
Maybe Florence and the Machine. I don't know what was going on in my life that stuck. But yeah, the good dog days are over. Kind of like I'm thinking truly, if you just need to be like hyped up with energy, yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
Sometimes music like that is so time of life specific. You can smell things when you listen to songs, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
You survived quick cues. Congratulations. I could talk to you for a really long time. I appreciate you suffering through all of our technical difficulties to have this conversation today. So thank you so much for joining me on Wonder Buzz, for covering so many topics.
Thank you.
I am going to remind everybody in the show notes how to see more of what you're up to. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining me on Wonder Buzz.
Thank you for having me.
All right, take care. Well, you've made it to the end of another episode of Wonder Buzz, just in time for a hailstorm to start. Thanks again to Sarah Sido for her time and insights today and her patience. You may not know this, but I am not a professional podcaster, and I had some major technical issues getting our call started today. It is almost worth some post-music credit bloopers, it was so bad. So thanks, Sarah, for your patience. If you want to see more of my photography or buy prints, head over to nathanlarson.com. I'm also working on a poetry project this year, and you can read all about that using the blog link on my website. If you'd rather consume my work through a platform owned by a modern-day Roman Empire, headquartered in a Texan server farm, governed by an algorithm that's really just a demonic reboot of the middle school popularity contest, one that decides if my post is engaging enough to be shown to more than 2 people, along with ads for fast fashion, making 3-piece suits for $15 that attempt to feed our insatiable desire to consume, then by all means, follow me on Instagram at Nathan Larson Photo. If you are enjoying Wonder Buzz, it takes less than a second to rate it, and it is super fast to leave a comment or a review. It is the best way to help other people find Wonder Buzz. I would love to hear from you, so email questions and comments to podcast@nathanlarson.com. Keep exploring, stay curious, and I'll see you on the next episode of Wonder Buzz. Mother of all that is holy. The world can't handle one of me, and there's like 4 of me in my head right now.
Did it get worse when I put these in? Like, did I cause it? Now I don't hear you at all. I can read your lips. We could just like do the whole thing that way. Now and then you could pantomime.
We can figure this out. 1 second. I have faith. I have